Greetings and good morning, and welcome to Book the Book, the first episode. I read the book, so you don't have to. Welcome to Book the Book. This is something I've wanted to do for a very long time, where I literally sit down and read a book. Somebody said to me recently, how on earth do you read so much? How do you get so much reading in? I said, I make it a priority. For me, ever since I started getting into personal development around the age of 19, truth be told, the first book I ever really read was a book called The Confidence to Be Yourself. And the reason why I read that book was because I'd just been dumped by a then girlfriend. I'm laughing and smiling about it now because I tell this story so much, but at the time it was a horrible experience, awful experience, especially as a 19-year-old boy who has seriously underdeveloped emotions. It was not a nice time. And I never forget the reason that she cited for dumping me was, she said, Miles, you're a great guy, but she said, you're not quite as confident as all the other boys at college. And, I want someone who's more confident, who believes in themselves more. And I kind of took my tail between my legs and moped about it for weeks. I'm not going to lie. I don't know whether I've ever been depressed, but I definitely felt as low as I probably ever have done. Age 19, being dumped and told that you didn't have confidence. And I remember thinking for weeks after, maybe that's just the way I am, right? Maybe that's just, I have to accept that that's my place in the world and there's not really much I can do about it. But then I don't know exactly why this happened. Call it law of attraction, call it luck, call it fate. Something led me one Saturday afternoon to turn right into Waterstones instead of left into what would usually be me going into HMV. Those of you that are young kids watching are like, what the fuck's HMV? HMV, music store. I would always go in there and buy CDs, hip hop, Jay-Z, all that stuff would usually make me feel really good. But on this Saturday, I turned right and went into Waterstones. And I found myself wandering around aimlessly, really, to be honest. I found myself in what was called then the self-help section. And I'd found a book, and I still have it. I wish I brought it. Maybe I'll do a review on it, called The Confidence to Be Yourself. And the reason why this book was I was drawn to this book is because it had the word confidence in it. I remember thinking that was the key word that saw me get dumped those weeks ago. So drawn to this word because it had been told that that was something I didn't have, I picked up this book and I read the back, and it was like, do you wish you had more confidence? And I'm like, yes. Would you like to know how to get more confidence? Yes. Then buy this book. It was worded much better than that. But that was probably the main reason why I bought that book. And I must have read that book in a week. Before then, I'd never read a book in a year. and my world into personal development was well and truly open. So that was really the start for me. And so now I'm a regular reader. Maybe 2 or 3 books sometimes in a week. I will go through and especially anything to do with spirituality, personal development, business, mindset, psychology, philosophy, anything like that. I'm fascinated with. And I decided, you know what Tony Robbins says, and I probably will definitely will review a Tony book. Tony says the secret to living is giving. And so that's a phrase that's constantly kind of on a loop in my head. How can I give more? How can I give more? How can I give more? And obviously I love doing lives. And I thought, well, why don't I start reviewing books? Because I know a lot of people that are like, oh, I wish I could read more. I've got books on my shelf I haven't read. I've heard that phrase, shelf development. I've got books on my shelf I haven't read. I'm not judging. But I thought, well, why don't I start? Because there's a lot of people out there that do this already. I'm like, why don't I start reviewing books on social media so that effectively you get the juice out of the book, right? I see fuck the book. What this is ultimately all about is I'm not a big fan of eating vegetables. Like sitting and eating vegetables bores the pants out of me. Hate it. However, don't judge me, vegetable people. I love to juice. Right, I would much rather put spinach and kale and carrots in a juicer and have it that way than I would eat it. And so for me, juicing is about extracting the goodness, right? Extracting the goodness out. So, and don't jump on me, all those people that say, oh, you're missing all the good. It's not what this is about. It was just a metaphor. So the point here is, I'm all for sitting down and reading, but if you're the kind of person that would just goes, just give me the juice, just kind of give me the nuts and bolts, then in this video and in this series, which is going to be probably become a regular thing if I get feedback that says you enjoy this. If you say it's rubbish, then I won't be doing more. But if people tell me that they like it, I'll definitely be doing more. So today's one, first one, Fuck the Book. Where would we be without starting with the amazing work of Brene Brown? Brene Brown, oh my days. If you've never seen her TED Talk on vulnerability, it's incredible. If you've not seen her Netflix documentary, A Call to Courage, it's fucking mind-blowing. And I think what really encompasses the TED Talk and the Netflix documentary is this book, Daring Greatly. An amazing book, all about how you can be a better leader in your personal life, in your professional life, and how you can set a better example for the people around you. So if that's you, if you're one of those people that wants to set a better example for the people around you, stick around. If you're not, go and do something else because this book's not for you. So what I'm going to do, my notes, I've got my notes here on my iPad, right? What I'm going to do there, I'm not in any particular order, but I'm just going to share with you what I think are the key points from the book, Daring Greatly. And by the way, if you've read this book, I'd love it if you have your own distinctions. Please share them in the comments. If you hear something and you think, wow, that fucking resonates with me, share that in the comments. I really want to make this a conversation, not just me kind of talking about the book. So got to start with one of the key things I actually heard a friend of mine say, but Brene Brown definitely says it in her own way. And she says, you know, vulnerability kills doubt, fear, and shame. Vulnerability is an asset. I used to believe that vulnerability was not a good thing, and that actually the more vulnerable I was, the more exposed I would be, the more likely it would be that people would laugh at me, judge me, etc. The opposite is true, right? The more I share about my fuck-ups, my failures, breakups, you know, age 19, that level of vulnerability, 15 years ago, I'd have never had the courage to share that. But actually sharing that is what makes people connect with you. So vulnerability, having the ability to share about failures, setbacks, problems, head in hands moments is a really important thing. And if you're out there watching this video and you're like, I don't know, building a brand, or you're a coach, a consultant, or something like that, then you definitely want to be doing more of that, because arguably your most unique selling point is you. And the more people like, trust, and respect you and admire you, the more likely they are to want to invest in you if that's your goal. And the fastest way to do it is to be vulnerable. That's not say, poor me, you know, this happened to me, but actually share an experience and then ask the audience, ask people how they can relate. So vulnerability, she says, is our greatest asset. She said, shame is triggered by our belief of what others think of us. So for me, the reason why I struggled with vulnerability in the past is because I was worried about what people would think of me. And I was thinking about mistakes I'd made. You know, over the years, I've had business situations maybe that haven't gone the way I wanted, and I felt shame. And Brene Brown says shame is ultimately triggered by our perception of what others will think of us. And so the reason why we often don't share is because she says that our two kind of primary beliefs are, and this is something I've heard Tony Robbins say, but ultimately the message is what's most important. She said, you know, social disconnection is what causes real pain, and actually an inability to be vulnerable causes more disconnection than connection. What that means is if you put on a front with someone, you think that that's going to create a connection with them. Like, I remember being a teenager and I don't know, one of the boys at college would do something that I thought was wrong, and I would laugh, right? And I would laugh because I want to stay connected. I want that social connection. And so what we do in adulthood is we often get into sort of agreeing with things that actually we don't really agree to, because we want to maintain a connection. The problem with that is because our two primary beliefs are that we're not enough and we won't be loved. So the reason why we do that is because we want to maintain that social connection. So for me, growing up as a teenager, I grew up with my mom. Dad wasn't around. So as a child, I grew up with a deep-seated kind of fear of rejection and that I wouldn't be accepted. So a lot of my world was around, how do I get approval? How do I get validation? And I went about it really the wrong way. And Brene's ultimately saying that actually being honest and vulnerable, so me speaking openly about the impact that it had on me as a teenager and as an early adult by not having a father, that level of vulnerability is what is going to help people connect with me. So it's like, you think that the social connection is going to come from just agreeing with the people that you don't really agree with, but actually by challenging the status quo and actually being more vulnerable about what you truly believe is what's going to really help you lead. She said, comparison is the thief of happiness. We live in a constant fear that we don't have enough. She said, comparison is the thief of happiness. And to remember, there's always someone doing better than you. I know over the years, and I still do, find myself comparing myself to other people. She said the way around this is to not compare in a negative way, but actually to look at people as role models. So, for example, I see somebody in the world that I admire that's of a similar age to me in this personal development space, like a Jay Shetty, for example. And my first response is one of comparison in a negative way. So first response was, when I first saw him on the scene, was, oh, that should be me, right? That was my first response. My response now, which is obviously a much healthier response, is that's amazing. How can I model that? Because achievement, as Tony Robbins says, ultimately is science. How can I model that? How can I model the bits of that? Because ultimately the strategies to get that person there are a science, right? So it's really important to know that comparison really is the thief of happiness. And it's really important that if you're a person that finds yourself comparing to yourself to other people, it's really important that you recognize that and look at it as, how can I model that person so I can fulfill my own potential and not as something that makes you feel bad. She said, vulnerability is not weakness. This is kind of repeating of a point. She said, we've been raised to believe that we must strive and succeed and not be open about our feelings. You may have seen recently my kind of new kind of brand positioning is really around kind of the fucked up man. And the reason it's that way is because I feel that as a man growing up in Western world, I was growing up kind of quite feminine, not very masculine, very in touch with my emotions, very in touch with my feminine energy, but struggled in kind of masculine peer groups. And for me, that I saw that kind of feminine part of me as a weakness. I tried to suppress it, and I would get very angry and really sort of speak out, and I would cause problems in my social relationships because ultimately I saw that vulnerability as a weakness. I tried to push back on that feminine energy, and we've been raised to believe that we should keep our feelings in, especially men, but women obviously as well, and that striving and succeeding is all that really matters. And I think really that's probably because at one point that was what was most important if you think about like post-war. So, but times have obviously changed. She said vulnerability is not just dark, because I'm talking a lot here about breakups and growing up without dad and all this kind of stuff, fuck ups. She said vulnerability is not just dark, it's light as well. She said it's the joy of a child skipping. That's vulnerable. Smiling at a stranger in a coffee shop is vulnerable because it exposes us. And often we don't like to be exposed because we have that fear that we'll be rejected. But it's really important to know that if you think about what we most love about children, their ability to just run up to another child in the park and just start playing. When I was a kid, I would just run up to kids and be like, hey, what's your name? Come and play. Right? So vulnerability is not just dark, it's light as well. So have more courage to do some of those things. She says, we all want love and connection, and we get more connection by being vulnerable, not less. She said the moments we feel most open is when we are being vulnerable. So it's really important that we're more vulnerable. She said, ignore your vulnerability and it will increase your feelings of fear, judgment, and shame. She said, verbalize your vulnerability and your shame, and you'll in fact see more empathy from others, because everyone feels it. Everyone's scared, everyone's worried, everyone's got fear, everyone's got doubts. And the way to build better connections with people is to actually share instead of keeping it to yourself. She said, vulnerability makes us stronger. Keeping it in is what makes us weak. We only feel shame when we disassociate and believe that we're different from others, when in fact we're all the same. She said we strive for perfectionism to try and shield us from failure, but she says, but perfection doesn't exist. Just accept it, right? Perfectionism doesn't exist. She said, be more content with who you already are. That's a really important one. And she said, going back to the comparison piece, she said comparison actually stems from school grade systems. She said, as an adult, you must break the emotional feeling that you're being graded. I fucking love that. Powerful. She said, we must be role models to the next generation and break this chain of feeling that we're being graded. She said, no child, if you're a parent especially, or you're planning to have children, no child can adopt a model that we don't fully live ourselves. And then I started to think about me and wanting to be a better role model for Sage. I wanted to grow up having the courage to be vulnerable. And she finishes off by saying, the greatest sense of belonging will come from more vulnerability. She says, more vulnerability equals more self-love, equals deeper relationships, equals better lives, better businesses, better health. And then I finish with a statistic, research shows only 1 in 4 men talk about their feelings. So if you're a guy watching this, be more vulnerable, right? Open up, be more honest with those people around you about how you're feeling. That's it. Over and out, there and greatly. Brene Brown, the first of these episodes. Well, if people like them, that is. Otherwise, I'll just stop. But if it turns out you have enjoyed this, I would love the feedback, not for an ego rub. It'd just be good to know if you found this useful. Maybe pop your key takeaways from that session in the comments. Let me know. I'd love you to share it if you found this useful. Tag a friend, whatever you want to do. The shares I definitely really appreciate. But that's it. Fuck the book. Episode 1. Highly recommend the book by Brene Brown. Daring greatly. Over and out. See you next time. Have a great weekend.